Good morning. Happy Monday. Welcome to the virtual quarter walk with Supervisor Gore. I'm Skip Brand, and I'm the owner of Healdsburg Running Company and the board member of the Sonoma County Economic Development Board and board member of the Healdsburg Chamber of Commerce. Today's event is part of a week-long celebration of economic development. We are offering a series of free workshops geared to helping businesses at any stage. For more information on upcoming workshops for the 2021 Sonoma County Economic Development Week, go to sonomaedb.org. Before I introduce Supervisor Gore, I just want to briefly go over this beautiful Monday, a couple housekeeping items. We have reserved time on the end of today's program to answer questions from our Zoom Q&A. You're welcome to submit questions at any time and comments during the program. However, refrain from harmful language or any personal attacks. Today's program and all programs this week are being recorded and available at sonomaedb.org. It's with great pleasure that I'd love to introduce one of the most passionate men and our supervisor, Supervisor Gore. Prior to his election, Supervisor Gore served as the Assistant Chief of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA's Natural Resource Conservation Service. He's a presidential appointment position where he led nationwide conservation efforts at the intersection of agriculture, business, and environment. His current responsibilities are at the board, North Coast Air Basin Control District, the Sonoma County Indian Gaming and Local Community Benefit Committee, the Northern Community Air Pollution Control District, I love this, the Eel and Russian River Commission, the North Coast Resource Partnership, Public Policy Facilitating Committee, and whether it's local here in Healdsburg, regional, or statewide, Supervisor Gore is dedicated to building healthy communities, environments, and economies. Please put a nice little quiet Zoom round of applause together and welcome James Gore.
Thank you, Skip. It's good to see you. Love what you do in the community. You're the example of many of our small and medium-sized businesses, which represent the beating heart of Sonoma County. Kind of businesses that not only cater towards outsiders and insiders alike, but build community as they build business. And so it's a pleasure to have you as an appointee to the Economic Development Board. It's a pleasure to see everybody on this Monday. And my mantra as we kind of move from response to recovery is the we is greater than me. So what does that mean, right? Like I want to jump in. I'm just going to be straight up authentic and direct with where we're at, where we're going, and start by thanking everybody from the business community here in Sonoma County for the hell that you have walked through, the gauntlet you have passed through, and for all the work that's needed both by you and what you need to direct us towards to support your efforts. I can't help but acknowledge that, you know, this pandemic has put us on our heels. Put us into a situation where there's a lot of antagonism and ubiquitous, overwhelming angst in all areas of our economy and our community. From the business side, you're talking about folks who have put their blood, sweat, tears, their equity, their sweat equity into their businesses. And this is the side of Sonoma County with really 80+% of our economy being driven by small, medium-sized businesses. Is, you know, these are folks who are just bootstrapping, making it happen, and creating value each and every day in Sonoma County. This is you, right? And sometimes we get in this crazy world of politics where it's business versus the environment versus society versus all these other things, but that's all crap, right? The reality is that we do have a thriving community, and just about everybody I know who's level-headed cares about a thriving economy, cares about a thriving ecosystem environment around them that they don't want to destroy, and they care about the people here in our community and trying to build promise. And that's what I'm all about too. So, you know, while many people on all sides of the political spectrum and the personality spectrum might try and say that our worst days ahead of us. I say BS. We got it going on. It's our time to get stuff done. And in spite of these disruptions, in spite of the 16 local, regional, and statewide and federal disasters that we have traveled through the last 6.5 years, we are building resilience, right? As much as some people say, God, I wish it was back to those days of complacency. I just say, you know, we're here. This is the moment that defines us. Decide where you're going to be. Step up, lean in, or be on your heels. So it's a pleasure to be with you all. And I also have to acknowledge that those of you in the business world, as you've gone through the frustration of what you've passed through over this past year, a lot of times I am a member, whether I want to be a politician or not, whether I want to be a public servant or not, whatever it is, I am a part of the royal we of government that has effectively been shutting down the economy for what would be considered the greater good, but there's a lot of antagonism there. There's a lot of frustration. There's a lot of postmortems, both on the people and also on the economy that we have to learn from. My biggest thing with the 2017 fires was making sure that we learned, responded, and changed things so that we were improved, that we were better with every single event. That is where we have to be with this pandemic, because for folks in Asia, you know, while this is the biggest, they also had a lot of experience with SARS and MERS, right? We have to anticipate that this will be a part of our disaster and our resilience portfolio going forward. And we got to make sure that that locally, statewide, nationally, is that we learn from not only the things that worked and put us in a situation where we're not like India right now, even though those are different situations, but at the same time, put us into a place where we have to demand better from ourselves, okay? So I want to start with that by bookending the fact that in 2017, we were caught by surprise, fires came down, they got into our communities, thousands of homes, and it took us 2 short years to encounter the Kincaid fire, and now this past year, Walbridge and others. And while we've had ripple effects of evacuations and other things, we have been far more prepared, far more ready, and far more safe and about taking care of each other through those. So that's what I see in terms of pandemic. I want to jump into some specifics right now and start by just thanking the EDB Economic Development Board staff. I want to thank the Chambers of Commerce out there, just up in our district, Cloverdale, Geyserville, Hillsburg, Windsor, Mark West, Santa Rosa, but also the other chambers, the Latino Chamber of Commerce, the Black Chamber of Commerce, all of the work that we have put into really supporting you. And I'm honored to find ways to continue to support those chamber networks in addition to the EDB as we move towards further recovery. I think we need these institutions more than ever. So that being said, I also want to encourage anybody who's on this call or listening in to a future recording is that if you want to get our support from Supervisor Gore's office, you got to realize that Supervisor James Gore is more of an office than it is a person anymore. Yeah, I'm Jimmy Gore, but Supervisor James Gore's office is really led by Jenny Chamberlain, our Chief of Staff, who's here on the screen. She's the manager, the Chief Operating Officer, has the octopus arms to be able to manage 18,000 things at once and keep me effective and make sure that I don't fly off into the stratosphere. At the same time, Jen Mendoza in our office, she is the self-anointed bureaucracy princess. She knows how to get things done within the government. Sometimes we find ourselves, even those of us who work in government, trying to figure out how we manage our own institution to deliver for people. And then we have Keith Roberts, who I don't think is on the call with us today, but he's our lead for communications, field representation, inflow and outflow of information, and vital transparency. So we got a great team. We also have some others that work with us, but Adrian Garialde and water and efforts in Alexander Valley, and we got a lot of work to do. So that being said, you know, that's enough of an introduction. I want to jump into some updates. So the first thing I want to say is that a lot of people are asking me these days, they say the June 15th reopening date designated by Governor Newsom, how likely is that to happen and what would derail that? I have the opportunity to be president of the California State Association of Counties, represent California's 58 counties, negotiations with the governor on not just pandemic, but a lot of these budget items and legislation that goes through. Had a good call the other day with Secretary Mark Galley, Health and Human Services, put this exact question to him and said, make it succinct. Tell me exactly. Don't give me the gobbledygook. Don't give me the wonk talk. Tell me what would derail a June 5th reopening. And he said, best way I can say this is that the only thing that would derail it is if fully vaccinated people are severely, put into a situation where they're hospitalized with a severe illness from COVID. That is it, right? So they're putting all their marbles into the vaccination side. And for me, that actually makes sense, right? Some of you might have seen in the Press Democrat, we had a report of where of all the vaccinations we've done, we've had about 20 or 25 people that have gotten COVID who were vaccinated. We had about 4 people who were hospitalized. None of those were serious hospitalizations requiring ICU, intubation, and all of these horrible things that we were going through. We have not had a single death or severe case in our skilled nursing facilities, our elder care facilities since February. Those are the indicators that are being tracked right now. So I think for you all, what does that mean? It means that we're still going to have a lot of these state guidances and guidelines about not just the what, but the how. Okay, if you're going to open up, still try to maintain this or this practice, or masking if you're indoor in these areas or whatever. But a lot of it is going to come back to you as businesses managing your areas appropriately. I anticipate there will be further regulations in one area, which is big events, big events. And we're talking about big events. We're not talking about as much 100, 200, 300 person wedding, get-togethers outdoor. We're talking about large events that bring people from all regions and places all around the country on planes together. And so things like Coachella, things like big conferences are still going to have to go through a certain area of discernment. And you all know what it's going to be, whether you like it or not, whether this is it or not, is it's going to be like me going to the Giants game. There's a certain section that's for people with vaccinations that they have more density. So with that being said, whether or not we all agree with what's going on, we are in a situation where we're doing our best to come through and move on. And I'm going to move to a couple other items real quickly before we go back to the EDB team. So first thing is that we got a drought. So what does that mean? It means be smart. It means the state's going to be working with us. This is one of those chronic disasters. This is not like a fire coming in, but it means think back a couple of years ago, 2014, 2015. There likely will be curtailments on stuff like we'll get back into that world of cities and water providers and others trying to get people to give up their lawns. There's going to be requirements on how many misters over the summer, you spew into the air. You're going to have to do this, but a lot of this, we know this, and we know it's just about being smart. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time and try and get into a dire area. That's not something that's going to set us up to destroy our economy as what we're going into the summer. It will have other impacts though. For instance, the Hillsburg Veterans Memorial Beach, the dam will not go up this year, right? That sucks. But you know what? We have low flow conditions. It would take us under those low flow conditions probably like 2 to 3 weeks to even get the dam to hold water. And then we probably have algae with the lower flows coming in. So we're not going to put a lot of, just like an institution like you as a business, we're not going to put a lot of time and effort into something that is not a smart decision, right? So the goal for us is to build future visions of what we're trying to do in that area, not just depend upon a dam, but potentially take a model like out of Reno and Bend and others and have an in-stream water park, right? Between Badger and Memorial Beach, where we have places for swimmers, waders, kayakers under low, high flow conditions. So that's the kind of thinking that I want you all to be a part of, is not just surviving through these times, but thinking what is the change elements that you want to be a part of doing. Those kind of plans are not just pie in the sky, they are actually actionable if we achieve them, okay? The other thing I want you guys to think about is that while everybody worries about fires, is that at this point, what you have seen in Sonoma County since 2017 is a different response to fires, okay? The Diablo winds that smoked us out in 2017, they came again in 2019. What you will see again is widespread communication if we have fires. You will see evacuations that basically allow firefighters to fight fires instead of evacuating people, so they can keep it out of our city centers and do the work needed. If we do have fires, we know that that impacts our economy. But at the same time, it's going to be vital that everyone a part of us not just looks at fire season, but reminds themselves that when we have red flag conditions, it's everybody's responsibility to keep an eye out. If you see something, say something. Use your businesses and your communications and your messaging to tell people to be safe, be aware. Can't tell you how many times we've had fires in the past in places like one of the biggest fires in state history, the River Fire in Mendocino County. That was from somebody who was in the backyard doing some yard work, hit a spark during a red flag condition, right? It's time for us to lean in and take care of this stuff and make sure that it's a part of a culture and a culture of resilience. Later this year, the Board of Supervisors, we're going to be looking at ways to have expenditures for stimulus, $96 million coming into our community from the Biden America Rescue Plan. Focus for me is going to be getting into the equity and social determinants of health and what the pandemic has exposed as some of our biggest issues. And then on the other side, long-term economic recovery. There's a lot of resources on the table from the state, grants, loans, other things like that. But at the same time, we're going to have to work with you all through the EDB and other things to figure out if there's other supplements that we put on the table. At the same time, many of you know that we put historic money. It's not the kind of historic investment you want to make when the economy's stifled, but into rental protection. There's a current program available for renters and landlords that you can go to socoemergency.org. That's $31 million into rent support. And that is desperately needed right now for many of you. The labor market outlook is, as you all know, I hear from a lot of businesses that I'm going to be real, is that it's very tough to get people to come to work. There's hesitancy with still the world of COVID. There's also still unemployment benefits and other things out there that make people wonder if they should go back to work now or go back to work in 3 months when those dry up. But as you all know, is that with the reopening happening on June 15th, unless there's crazy making and something gets derailed, that's where we're going to be tracking towards, and you're going to see a lot of people wanting to come back to work. And that is what we're all about. So on the other side, housing and homelessness. I could spend a lot of time getting into this, but I do want you to know that we have a regional hub for North County with all the cities and service providers. We do anticipate that there's going to be more purchases of hotels, motels to go towards permanent supportive housing, ones that are defunct. If you know of anybody out there who's interested in their properties being considered either for purchase of permanent supportive housing or have lots that they're interested in safe parking programs, or if they have locations that they're interested in other kind of facilities, reach out to our office. We're going to start to go through a process with the cities and the county in different regions of what do we invest in. Homelessness will not go away with enforcement in itself. We do not have the ability or even the legal right to enforce and move people if we do not have places to move people to. So what does that mean? It means all solutions are controversial. If I propose something in a rural area, people say, you can't put it here next to me in a rural area. It's too far away from services. If I say, let's do it downtown, they say, oh, that's going to hurt downtown businesses. And if I say to put it in a suburban neighborhood, they say, nah, it's dangerous for our kids in our schools. I want you to understand that all solutions on the table in these disruptive times are all about the mantra of imperfect, relentless progress. Progress. So thank you. Tell us what we need to know today and others. Lean into these difficult times and show that you can help us be not just Sonoma strong and not just Sonoma ready, but Sonoma safe and Sonoma go. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
James, this is Skip. Thanks so much, Jimmy, for your passion, obviously your service. I even love the straight talk on Zoom. It's a little more fun. Thank you. The love of the outdoors in this pandemic, we learned that's our savior a little bit. And then, my gosh, you now lead by example. Even on Zoom, it doesn't add 10 pounds to you. You look quite fit. So thanks again for making me so proud to serve you on the Economic Development Board. But not only proud of Jimmy and what he's done, but really this EDB board is amazing. I get a chance now to introduce 4 of the most stellar members, but this team may be small, but they're lean and mean. And anytime they are called for any emergency, the office is an amazing economic development office, but just comes alive. They're innovative. They're able to find grants everywhere. So the team themselves will introduce themselves. But what I would like to do is, Christine is amazing. She's going to tell you a little about what she's doing and proud of. Lauren Cartwright is an all-star. We don't even know if this guy is 1 or 5 people, but Marcos is literally does so much. We think he has 5, twins out there helping serve. And Patricia, you'll listen to here. So guys, give it up. Our staff here at EDB is tireless. They've been working since day 1 in the pandemic, providing equitable relief and recovery for everyone. Over 900 businesses with COVID-related issues were solved and taken care of. 2,000, that's a big number. People, 2,700 have outreached and got help and got mitigation efforts and resources. And it's really all sorts of services during COVID relief, whether it's starting up, whether it's expansion or relocation, whether it's financing, consultation of business, workforce assistance. Guys, I'm a small business in Healdsburg, and probably for once, even if you're an innovator and believe you can solve all these problems yourself, you cannot in a pandemic. And this team at EDB is just one to please listen to and take it away, team. I'm excited to hear what you're up to. You'll introduce yourselves and talk about what you're proud of here in Sonoma County.
Thank you, Skip, for that great introduction. My name is Christine Palmer. I'm a program manager here at the Sonoma County Economic Development Board. I am part of a 4-person team, as Skip mentioned, providing direct business assistance to help grow our economy. I specialize in 2 key areas. First, I provide market research to help businesses to launch and to grow. We offer a range of tools, everything from industry reports, demographics, finding your target market, site location, as well as marketing lists, which are our most popular and utilized service. We have found that although the information is readily available in the marketplace, our research has found that businesses don't access it either due to a lack of time or money. So the EDB is making it available for free to give our businesses a competitive edge and, most importantly, to increase their success rate. And the second area I work in is supporting our emerging sectors. So that includes craft beer several years ago, and most recently, my work with the outdoor recreation sector. And I'd say in regards to the thing I am most proud of in 2020, I would have to say it is the work that our business assistance team did in terms of our COVID response. From the very start, we were on the front lines, fielding calls from businesses, making presentations on CARES Act funding, providing information on reopening guidelines, and most recently, the vaccine rollout. And I feel like in a time of really great uncertainty, we became a reliable and a trusted point of contact for businesses, both large and small in the county. And as Skip mentioned, we provided over 900 assists in the last year. And I'd say I'm particularly proud of the work I did helping to reopen our outdoor recreation companies last summer. If we remember, there was no federal or state guidelines in the early months. The EDB took a leadership role, and we quickly assembled industry stakeholders to develop reopening guidelines. And I took the lead working with our outdoor recreation sector, so work with Skip, as well as Safari West, the ranch at Lake Sonoma, Sonoma Canopy Tours, water treks. And together we helped develop guidelines for reopening. And that became particularly important because when the state did finally release guidelines in late May, there was no guidance on outdoor recreation reopening. It had been overlooked. So this was a critical time. We were approaching summer. Many of the businesses I was speaking to, they were struggling to stay afloat. And I'd have to say thanks to the work the EDB staff did, our regional parks, and working closely with our county health officer, we were able to advocate and allow outdoor recreation companies to reopen in time for their summer high season. So I'm really proud of the work we did in this last year, and I hope we can continue to bring our flexibility and our problem solving in any future projects. Thank you.
My name is Lauren Cartwright. I'm a Business Retention and Expansion Program Manager here at the EDB. I primarily focus on helping businesses understand the different financial opportunities that are out there. So whether they're looking for traditional financing or alternative, whether it's via grants or state programs, I kind of help you navigate that path. We also get a lot of startup requests. So in terms of technical assistance, trying to understand what permits you need, do you need a business license, anything like that. I also work to help a lot of businesses with that information. I think COVID's been really interesting because despite all the businesses that have been struggling to understand the guidance, what's required, what finances are out there, we're getting a lot of folks who are just curious about, well, okay, I lost my job because of this. How can I retool and pivot and make my own business now that I have the opportunity to do so? I have time on my hands. So it's been interesting to respond to all those requests and to see kind of some success stories that come out of that. We also worked very closely with Small Business Development Center, the Napa Sonoma Small Business Development Center, to help just establish resources. So that's a program that's primarily funded by the SBA, the Small Business Administration. So they really had a lot of information about the CARES Act funding. So they were great partners just to help businesses figure out how to apply for PPP, how to make it a forgivable program. So our team really worked closely with the SBDC during all of the last 14 months of chaos, we call it. I think one thing I am very proud of in the last year is the development of socolaunch.org. And that was kind of, as Christine mentioned, our team was just all hands on deck within those first few hours, few days leading up where COVID was shutting everything down. And we alone were trying to figure out, okay, the state website has this information and the SBA has this and SBDC has this, but how can you tell a business owner, okay, go to these 10 websites, find this information, and this will help you figure out if you can reopen. So we decided to pull it all together to one location. It became a really great one-stop shop for our city partners. So they were kind of referring folks directly to SoCo Launch. We developed these kind of partner calls so we could share information, adding more resources, making sure everything was getting translated as well was really quite important. So SoCo Launch enabled us to have, here, view this page in English and view this page in Spanish, not just using Google Translate. So that was definitely a big success point that's still very active today. And I think I'll pass it on to Marcos.
Thank you, Lauren. Good morning, Supervisor Gore, everyone here present. My name is Marcos Suarez. I'm the Business Diversity Program Manager here for the Economic Development Board. And yes, it's quite been a year, but we're really proud to be able to work. And one of the things that I do, what I specialize in, obviously helping startups throughout the county, but a lot of my focus is I do speak Spanish and I work with a lot of people in the Latino community, monolingual Spanish speakers, also in our underserved communities, including women-owned businesses, Black-owned businesses, Asian-owned businesses, LGBTQ community. I love, working with everyone. And one of the things that's very important, and what Lauren just mentioned, is translating, interpreting, including right now with this call where there's interpretation. And it's been the norm for us at the Economic Development Board to make sure that all of our information that comes out is in English and in Spanish. We do not send anything out of the Economic Development Board that is produced by us unless it is translated in Spanish, and that's very important. But one of the things that I'll mention, and I want to give thanks to Supervisor Gore's office for really early on in the pandemic being willing to work with us and always working with us, obviously, and supporting a grant for together with the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce to be able to do boots on the ground outreach to a lot of our small businesses that didn't have the access to Zoom calls or online, and we were able to work with Neil Pacheco out in the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Alma Magallon, who has been wonderful, a lot of our other partners throughout the county, as well as other small business development entities, including Centro Hispano, SBDC, Latino Alliance, in different areas in the county. But that was very crucial. And one of the things I'm very proud of is that even recently, going up to Cloverdale and knocking on those doors, being safe, of course, wearing our face masks. But even just a month ago, there were a couple of businesses out in Cloverdale that had not applied for PPP funding. And they were skeptical. They really did not know whether they were the government was gonna ask for that money back and whatnot. And so, but I was able to go out there and work with them. And thankfully, with our partners out there on Exchange Bank, they were able to apply. And within a few days, they were able to get that funding that they needed, and also apply for the California grant. So these are the type of things that we are doing out there. But the last thing I'll mention is that we can't do it without our partners throughout the city. Like Lauren mentioned, city partners are different partners of the different chambers that have been working with us here, this group here, District 4 as well, all of the different chambers of commerce, organizations that are working with us. So we're really proud to be here and continue to do the work that we do, helping those people that need it the most. And of course, a lot of them, the ones that I help, are the underserved businesses out in our community, in our county. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Patty Andrews, and I am the program manager for business services. This is a fairly new position. I started in October. And so this position, what I do for the Economic Development Board is really bridge the services between the Workforce Investment Board and connect them with business. So issues that you have with workforce, finding your future employees, making sure that they have training opportunities for your current workforce that you need to upscale so that you can be more productive and expand your business, and access those fundings from both the Workforce Investment Board as well as the state. Also connect you to tax incentives. So things that you're doing when you hire folks from barrier populations. So like folks that are homeless, folks that receive public assistance, folks that have been justice involved. There's tax incentives for bringing them onto your workforce. And so I'm able to connect you with those. And what I'm most excited about is really being able to transition for the Workforce Investment Board, bridge the services that both the WIB and the EDB provide, and utilize my 26 years of experience with human services in the WIB to provide those services. So this is a really exciting opportunity for me to be able to help you, our local business partners. So thank you.
So Christine,
go ahead.
Christine and team, are you going to take over the Q&A?
Yep, I think we're going to head into that feature right now.
Folks,
Yes.
This is your opportunity. Any questions for Supervisor Gore or the EDB team?
And it looks like we've got a couple in here. Supervisor Gore, we've got a couple around mental health services, the county, state, and federal levels. Kind of an overall feeling that we need more to offer to try and help the homelessness problem in the area. Do you know, based on what you touched on earlier, can you provide any additional detail around how this is being considered or potentially funded?
Yeah, so good question, and a vital one on the ground. So the connection between homelessness and behavioral health, mental health is there. The connection between homelessness and also substance abuse is there. So let me give you a couple of high-level things, and if anybody wants follow-up, we can do it. Number one is that we're breaking ground on a behavioral health unit at our jail that will deal with some of the behavioral health specific concerns there. The irony, I posted something on this recently, is that outside of all of our shelters and other things, the sad truth is that the policies of the past have led us to a place where the jail is the biggest shelter in the county. We have an average daily population in the jail pre-COVID of about 1,100. Right now it's 650. Of that, 40% self-identified homeless, 48 to 50% self-identified mental illness. And of that 50% self-identified mental illness, half of those, so a full quarter of the folks in our jail, some kind of mental illness requiring direct intervention. So that is a hub, that is a high acute area. But at the same time, we passed a countywide sales tax measure last year called Measure O, that was to go into this issue. So $25 million a year. I'm on the ad hoc for that. We're building out a psychiatric health facility, which is for the high acuity. We're trying to make sure that we have places for folks to go. Now, that's not just homeless, that's behavioral health. But on the mental health side, you're going to also see renewed investments because of the sales tax into schools for upstream investment or early intervention investment. Let me just say this. I was on a call the other day and somebody said, a principal from a school said, we have kids in the 4th grade who have never had a full school year. I was like, what? And I thought about it. I was like, wait a minute, my daughter's in the 4th grade. I started to write down this list. I was like, he's right. Kindergarten, Tubbs fire, they were out of school. 1st grade, the smoke from the Butte fire shut us down for weeks. Kincaid fire, intermixed with a bunch of floods. And then on the back end, 2 years of the pandemic, right? It's like, wow, right? So I think we all know that, all of this flows together, but, we're trying to focus on mental health community-wide, making sure we have the safety net set up and the partnership set up. And if anybody wants to connect to those, let us know. We have a great group called Health Action. As I mentioned, I anticipate a bunch of money from the stimulus funds going into this area, homelessness, housing, and behavioral health as well. But, and then on the other side is just the understanding that under current legal constraints, we have injunctions with federal judges that we cannot move homeless encampments unless we have a place to put people. And that has put us all into a position where that old refrain, which is deal with this and I don't want to see the solution in my neighborhood. Why I said before, those days are gone. So you're going to see people like me, even though it's a tough issue politically, leaning in. So you'll see more announcements this year. Historic money coming out of the state as well that we can leverage. So it's on.
Thank you. And there's also another question here, which Supervisor Gore, I don't know if you want to touch on. What is the outlook for partnering with the cannabis industry, which not only holds potential for tax revenue, but also needs to be considered when addressing our ongoing water and workforce issues? Are we getting in front of this at all?
Yeah, it's a mess. And like a lot of these issues is that you got to embrace the mess. So I won't go into the history of it, but we're at a place right now where our Sonoma County Planning Commission just voted on potential changes to the cannabis ordinance, which would in effect create a path for not just where we don't want cannabis, but where we streamline and prioritize projects that we do want. And that's what we've been trying to figure out. So later this month, May 18th, if anybody's interested, there's going to be a Board of Supervisors hearing on this. We could either wait another year and a half and study and redesign the whole system and just let what is a flawed system right now just continue, or we can make some changes and then look at the full revamp. I'm in support of making some changes, which would allow for streamlined permitting. It's called ministerial permitting, right? So you don't go before a planning commission, but you have to hit standards for areas of agriculture, zoned land intensive agriculture, land extensive agriculture. And really, if folks go to areas where there's not neighbors close by, where there's not huge resource concerns up in the hills, is that you can have a streamlined process rather than be appealed at every stretch of the imagination. So that is the goal for somebody like me as a policymaker. We're continuing to try and set it up, but for anybody who wants more information, it is a deep issue. It gets into things like California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA challenges, mitigated negative declarations versus conditions of approval. It's a very thick area to legislate right now. It's very hard for us to loosen certain restrictions under an environmental document that we have without redoing a new one. It's going to be expensive, but we're looking to make some changes this year. We'll see if the votes get there with the board. Advocate if you care about it. May 18th, there'll be a big board item and big discussion. Probably be a couple hundred people there yelling at each other. And in the middle, there's a lot of reality, but on the two sides, between those who wear red hats and say that it's devil's weed, and then some of the folks on the other side who wear green hats and say, you just need to let us do it everywhere. There's a lot of reality that needs to be taking place.
I see a question here, which I'm not sure if you can answer. I know that our department's been working on prison to employment program with the Workforce Investment Board. There's a question about what is the outlook for Sonoma County with the early release of 76,000 inmates, including violent and repeat felons. I'm not sure about I don't think the report has been finalized, Gus, but I know our department is working on that with some of our fellows. Supervisor Gore, I don't know if you have anything you could add to that.
Yeah, I would just say the partnerships with our probation department, especially if you think about with, the jail manages up to a certain degree, the DA and all of these early releases or releases to free up space within the COVID continuum. I mean, that's taken place. As I mentioned, the average daily population in our jail is not at half, but it's close to that. So there's a lot of policy changes at the state. There's been decriminalization of personal use of drugs, not just marijuana, but other personal use. Those all have ancillary ripples and impacts in our community. Sometimes I've had trouble shutting down drug houses because the people that you bust, if they have just under an amount, they just keep going back and forth. It costs us more time to do paperwork for a misdemeanor, and they get released before the guys even finish the paperwork. But once again, the state policy and a lot of this is to manage this stuff in the community and not in jail settings, and I do support that overall. So the prison to job and pipeline, a lot of the best way that I've seen that stuff working is through conduit programs, and some of them you'll see within a youth focus. You'll find like the Lime Foundation with Letitia Hankey, with Social Advocates for Youth, Homeless Youth, and others getting folks into trades training. You have other things that are directly into schools with CTE Foundation, but probation and Economic Development Board and Workforce Investment Board, I think it's a prime time area. There's a lot of, let's just put it this way, there's a lot of jobs in Sonoma County that are service-based jobs, tourism-based jobs, other based jobs that folks can move into if they're willing to work their butts off, right? So the question really of that goes back to communities. When we had, for instance, the Salvation Army, which did a lot of judge mandated services over here out of Hillsburg, there was a ripe partnership with Hillsburg Rotary and others to get businesses lined up and get a list of businesses that were willing to bring people in as either interns or other situations. And sometimes businesses need to have some parameters around it and a support network that is like, hey, here's an organization I can work with. So there's some training associated with it, right? And I think that would be a really good, interesting thing for the Workforce Investment Board to really look at is who is kind of the organization and through the WIB, the area to conduit these through, because I think there's a ton of businesses that are looking for hard workers. I've seen this firsthand. I've seen a lot of success with that program in the past, but they need some kind of a delivery program so they don't get scared away by talking to probation folks and thinking of everybody who's been in the system as being an ex-con and a danger, as opposed to having a way to add value into our community. So thank you.
I think this kind of adds to the value and the importance of having Patty's role in our department too, where it kind of shows the partnership between the Workforce Investment Board and kind of the different, we're looking for creative solutions for those workforce challenges, right? So thank you for that. Let me see if I can round up any other questions. And let's see, Patty, I think, did you want to add something in there as well?
I did.
For the PT
Yes.
program?
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for mentioning what you did, Supervisor Gore. So the Workforce Investment Board has a grant. It's called Prison to Employment. And when we were clearing off the trail, we also expanded that grant into working with the homeless. An interesting statistic is that a majority of folks that are homeless do have a justice involved background. And so the Workforce Investment Board and now the Economic Development Board jointly are working with these folks to help them get work ready. We refer them to training programs. We've had many go in to the trades, whether it was the union-based trades or working for private employers, and they have found some great success. These clients or these community members, they do face some difficulty with getting back into the workforce, just simply because of whether real or assumed issues as far as liability for the businesses. But they have really proven to be great employees, especially in this time where it's difficult to find a workforce and coming back into COVID. So exciting that that question came across. We do have funding. We have received a grant locally, and we do have funding to work for them, to work with this population. And we absolutely plan to expand that and lean in and help them become a great benefit to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. And then let's see, I don't see any questions. Supervisor Gore, I had a question. When you were talking about the different funding coming through from the American Rescue Act, I know our department worked very closely with the Board of Supervisors for the Small Business Stabilization Grant from the CARES Act funding last year. I know it's a little preliminary, but do you think that as this additional funding comes in, that grant program might be duplicated or possibly revised, or how that might work?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing that I would like to see as a part of that I'm looking towards is a gap analysis, right? Is where do the state funds, which were $1.2 billion into a grant program, sit? Have we been able to get those, and where do we put the money? So the stimulus money, I don't think it'll go out heavily into the community until August, September timeframe, right? We're going to do regular budget workshop in June, which is all about staff and community investments with our budget. Then we're going to bring those back and do figure out a way to do roundtable and communication with you all and others. And what I would really like to see for long-term recovery is a gap analysis that says, here's the federal, state, and what are the local programs that go towards this. I don't want to replicate those, right? I want to set them up in a smart way. But definitely we've been told time and again that folks don't want just more loans, right? They need little seed grants and other things like that. So one of the things that I led also was an item that we're going to put $2.8 million of county funds into back paying folks who had to pay environmental health fees, even though their restaurants or other food serving businesses were closed at the time, right? Like that, as a business, you're like, what the heck, right? But as us, I mean, there's a statutory requirement to continue to do those reviews. But so on that side, those kinds of things are important for me to look at and important for me to consult with not just EDB, but you all in the chambers to see what's the true gap analysis and how it gets out there, right? So thank you.
Are there any other questions from the audience? We've got just over 30 participants today, so now is your time to ask.
You know, I'm gonna go into one other one that I think is important, just because you're waiting for another one, is that I am going to make a big push, and I have for a couple of years, but for us to go into open up this word is weird, it's government, but it's called procurement, right? Those of you in the business world, you know what procurement is. Contracting for goods and services. Okay, so Lauren, you're talking about grants, right? Or we're talking about loans. Well, let's talk about where the real money is for the largest institutions in our county. We have a $2.1 billion budget, okay? Think about if you add to that the city of Santa Rosa, the 8 other cities outside of Santa Rosa here, and then if you look at the other special districts, you're talking about billions of dollars that goes in goods and services into the community, or I mean, obviously we have our biggest cost is our own workforce, but take an area like mental health services. We put $30+ million a year into our community for mental health service providers to do backbone support, core support. If you go over into other areas, we have a huge opportunity to rewrite those laws so that they truly enhance and incentivize local contracts, equity contracts, other things like that. If you look at the federal level, when I was out there, every federal agency has, God, you want to talk about a crazy acronym, OSDBU, the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization, right? So, you know, governments can get a little too wonky. You got to make sure that you don't put so many requirements in and results-based accountability that nobody wants your stinking contract, right? Because they're like, it's more money to report back on those things that are there. But sometimes you got to make sure that public dollars are going towards public good as well. So a good example would be, there was a controversy at the Economic Development Board 4 years ago or something when we contracted a web developer to do the new face for a web project for EDB. And a bunch of local web folks are like, well, why the heck did you give it to somebody in Oklahoma? And then he comes back and they're like, well, it was a competitive bid. And then we say, oh, well, as a county, we have a local preference rate, which means that you can, if your bid comes in 5% higher and you're local, you can get it. Well, this bid comes in from somebody who is in Oklahoma, whose office costs $300 a month to rent. Their rent costs $400 a month. And then the money that we put into there, even though we're trying to save 10 grand, it doesn't go into employees here. It doesn't get spent in our community. And I think there's a smart way to address this, right? I'm not saying like, I'm going to create some kind of a closed, perfect network that we're going to spend atrocious amounts of money to do it. But we are thinking about the way we spend money in a very incomplete formula. The money we put into the community needs to be tracked in terms of the how it cycles back in terms of not just community good, but sales tax, property tax, rents, other things like that. So I really think that this is an area that is a huge potential marketplace. Whether people like it or not, government is the largest institution in these areas. And as one county and 9 cities and all these special districts, think about how many consulting reports, think about how many websites, think about how much janitorial services, other kinds of things like that, and think about where you need to be in a position to thrive. I was told by somebody who's active in the small business community here, he looked at me and he said, I can't get into your contracting. Does copy machines, things like that. And I said, well, does the local preference need to change? And he's like, no, you just need to open up the stinking procurement. I can beat them, but you got to open up the procurement, right? You've had it locked up and keep doing renewed contracts on people for 3 years at a plus. You know, and he's not talking about a service where he's going to be, these are incremental margin services, right? These are not like you're going to get rich quick. It's just like, why can't I bid on the contract here locally? So I believe that. And I think part of a long-term recovery needs to be that procurement side. It's far more by a factor of not just a 10, but 50 to 100 in terms of that money compared to grants that could be on the table through a stimulus.
I'll be curious to see how that might foster entrepreneurship even a little bit too, because as our local government's looking for these different services that may or may not be in existence, does someone want to transform or modify their business to provide that vegetation management service or anything like that? So that can be kind of interesting to see how that sparks.
Yeah, well, you know, we've had folks who come in and say, I mean, sometimes it's fought for by, I'll give you an example. I saw somebody's name on here who represents Engineering Contractors Association, John Bly, great advocate. You know, they have union groups, they have non-union groups, but their goal is that they not only want us to invest in the roads because they live in Sonoma County, but they also want to bid on those contracts, right? They want to be paving and creating better transit systems and other things like that. So then we're in a place where it's like a win-win. We have locals who want us to spend public dollars on this stuff and help get loud during budget. And then we put that money out and then we get a response. And then I go out and I get to see, my daughter's handing me a piece of jerky. Thank you.
So I did, while Jimmy has a little bite of jerky and we're looking for more questions, this is Skip. I think it'd be fun to hear you kind of close out a little bit. We found in the pandemic, and we've always known it, we're all locals, how our outdoors are so amazing. Looking back on Measure M and Bert and what the folks are doing in the parks, what encourages you there? What are you doing with the Eel and the Russian River Commission? Tell us some of the things that you're so proud of and what we're noticing with programs like now Measure M coming through.
Hi, Skip.
Hey, how are you?
So, Skip, this is perfect, man. Let's tee this up. Okay, so first of all, like you say, I mean, we have to use this as a monumental shift in terms of outdoors in Sonoma County. Why the heck are we indoors so much? It's beautiful here. You guys at the Economic Development Board already did this report on the outdoor economy. You were the one who's looking at me and going like, what the heck? We got it better than Bend here if we build the infrastructure and others around it. Travel to these places, Moab, others, you know, but it's also about evening out the tourist and outdoor impact, getting people on mountain bikes up into Lake Sonoma, getting more river locations up into the mid stretch of the river so we don't just only get bombed down in the lower river. Places like the Russian River, as a part of this pandemic, have not only been discovered, they have been over discovered once again. We are back into the days of the 20s, 30s, 40s, where this is vacation wonderland, and we have tens of thousands of people on little plastic one-use unicorns drinking shots, going down the river and leaving all that crap, right? You know, so we got to have policies and plans that deal with that impact. But at the same time, you know, I talked about Memorial Beach and having that be like a boardwalk hub and an opportunity. We also have a parkway opening up on the northern stretch near Preston Road, Geysers Road. That's going to be an amazing resource. We have an Asti Bridge going in and a potential public site there. We're working on another public site at Geyserville. We have the Tribe in Alexander Valley, River Rock, trying to build out a public access site there. We have the Hanson Ponds next to Riverfront. I got about $4 million in tribal mitigation money. We're looking to pump into there to restore those ponds, make it good for fish, for people, for other things. We have this capacity. Our regional parks became a life-saving vital resource for people during this pandemic. And then let's translate that forward. We already have a great outdoor education continuum, but why the heck do we not have our schools going and doing? All of them have a formal partnership with a reserve, a preserve, or a park. That is their playground. So that if we do have a pandemic problem again, is that we're not like lock down the schools and all the fields. We can still take you out and teach you here. So what I think we need to do is I think it actually would be a great final thing for us to follow up on the Economic Development Board report on the outdoor recreation and bring in the schools for agreements with these areas, bring in the current providers and potential providers, identify these investments. We are making substantial investments. You're going to see the Russian River access points basically will have been doubled in the last 10 years, right? And with more amenities and stuff too. So we're right there. And I think the other thing is we've been discovered once again through the pandemic again. A lot of the Bay Area and Northern Wilderness has converged on us like they always do. And it's go time. So I think we should be embracing that as a full-blown partnership going forward so that we never go back to saying we're going to isolate all these things into segments. Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy. I want one word, at least from you, Kristen, Marcos, Lauren, and Patricia, of what you're looking forward to today. And then we'll let Jimmy wrap it up with his one word. Go for it, guys. No pressure.
I'll say excited, especially with the work I'm helping with the outdoor rec group. I think the time is now. So I'm excited to do what I can to push it along.
Marcos.
Just really enthusiastic about what's coming, getting out there, outdoors, on our bikes, running.
Lauren, what do you think?
Ready. Ready for camping and kayaking. It's been a long wait.
Patricia, close us out. Just
All right. I'm going to stick with the E theme, encouraged to hear about working with some of these populations that typically we don't, the justice involved, the homeless, and helping them contribute to their community and being a part of us through employment. So, yay.
Jimmy, close us out. And guys, thank you everyone who came in and listened today. It's our first one. It's a big economic development week. Jim, what do you got?
Resilient. And I use that in the sense of the former head of FEMA wrote a book called Stronger in the Broken Places. So we're not just beaten down and getting back up bloodied and like wounded. We are learning and we are stepping in. So we are resilient, and that is powerful, not weak. Thank you.
Guys, Sonoma Strong, thank you all. Have a great day. See you, Jimmy.